Evening and welcome to the Hartland Township Planning Commission meeting of September 12th, 2019. We'd like to begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Keith, would you take roll, please?
Sure. Mr. Fox?
Here.
Jeff Newsom? Joe Kalani?
Here.
Sue Grissom?
Here.
Mike Mitchell?
Here.
Tom Murphy?
Here.
All present, accounted for.
All righty. Thank you, Keith. Next up, item 4, approval of our meeting agenda.
So moved. Support.
Motion from Commissioner Kalani, second from Commissioner Mitchell. Any changes? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Next up, we have approval of meeting minutes.
So moved.
Support?
We have a motion to approve the meeting minutes of August 8, 2019 from Commissioner Grissom, second from Commissioner Voigt. Any changes?
There's, at the very top, the call to order, the meeting was called to order. I think that should have been by Chair Fox.
Yes.
Instead of, wow. Remember, I think that's an automatic thing, so that happened once before.
It did. So, all right, so we have the motion with the changes noted. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Next up, item 6, call of the public. Anyone? Seeing none, we'll move right on to item 7A. This is site plan application number 19-007, Hacker Road Plan Development. We are in a first phase of that, or the first step of that, a concept plan. So if the applicant, anybody would like to come forward, we'll let Troy introduce the project, and then we'll turn the floor over to you. Sound good? Perfect.
Whatever suits your pleasures.
All right, well, that does, so we'll go with that.
All right.
Troy, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Let me start off by trying to give a brief overview of where this is located. This is a zoning map of the township. The intersection of 23 and 59 is right here. This property is on the western boundary if you took 59 all the way out to Hacker Road. And then this property is going to be just north of that intersection on Hacker Road. So we're way over in the western portion, west central portion of the township. That's the area that we're going to be focusing on. This is a general site plan. What I thought I would do is actually start off with a different site plan that I have. This is the proposed development here. This would be Hacker Road going north and south. M59 would be just towards the bottom of the screen. And then this is the Venture Church. And then over here is Walnut Ridge Estates over here. So this is the project. It's a residential planned development. The main entrance comes in off of Hacker Road, comes in as a cul-de-sac. There's a second cul-de-sac on the northern portion of it. There is a connection to Walnut Ridge. If you recall, when Walnut Ridge was going through its planned development process, that project involved providing an access, also utilities, to serve this development over here. There is about 55 units. Actually, not about. There are 55 units that are part of this. There's the property currently is 2 separate parcels, but it would be combined into one. It's part of it's as proposed. It's a planned development that will involve the conceptual phase that you see here. This is an opportunity for the Planning Commission to provide comments on this project. There won't be a formal decision on this. And then the applicant will move on to the Township Board for the Township Board to provide comments for this development. And then, assuming the applicant wants to move forward with the project, we would move on to the preliminary plans phase, where the plans would be much more detailed, and after that would be the final plans, which was actually more of the condo documents and the plan development agreement type documents. So that's the process that you have in front of you. That's an overview of this project and where it fits in to the surrounding areas. And with that, I'll just leave it open for any questions or comments you might have.
All right. I think what we'll do is turn the floor over to you. Anything you'd like to add or say, then we're going to run through the staff memo from dated September 5. So,
Sure, we'll make a whole lot of comments. Troy, I like your plan.
You want to go back to that one?
No, it was great. It shows the whole area.
I didn't do it.
Oh, okay. Great compilation. So, all right. Yes, we're here tonight looking for comments pertaining to the project. A number of things, and I won't belabor the whole process, because obviously you've looked at the plan, and we're here to get feedback as much as anything else. But yeah, 55 units on 24 and a half acres. As you're well aware, the master plan looks at this piece of property and calls it as medium suburban density residential development. So we're looking for a PUD. The biggest issues with this, we tried to take this piece of property and create something that, quite honestly, we have a lot in Hartland Township. You have a lot of 1.5, 2 acre parcels, larger developments. We've put together a lot of them over the last 10 or 15 years. The buying community these days are looking for different types of products. They're not all looking to mow an acre or an acre and a quarter or an acre and a half of land and take care of their house and do all the things that we, those of us that have owned houses and property for over the years, have enjoyed doing. Most of them want no maintenance. They don't want to take care of property. They don't want to mow the grass. They want something that's completely different. And so hopefully this provides a form or a type of housing that currently you have in Hartland Township, but in somewhat limited supply. What this has done is we tried to cluster everything toward the center of the property. The big question, comments with regard to open space. I thought I'd make it really colorful, because color always helps everybody. That's the overall open space, not including the areas between units or between developed parcels, but just the large portions of the property. We've set the nearest unit 200 feet off of Packer Road to keep it off the road, landscape that road area. Everything's at least 50 feet off property lines, and a majority of the wooded area in the southeast as well is going to remain there. There's some wetlands up in there, so you can't really develop it anyway, but those are the green areas. That's the open space, and it gives you a little different perspective when you look at it. So with that, we're here to hear your comments, your thoughts. If you have any questions, we're happy to answer those as well.
great. Those, if everybody recalls, conceptual is pretty broad. It's pretty basic. There isn't a lot of detail to it. We're going to just run through the staff memo just so we hit the points to talk. So I'll just bring up the point a little bit, and then if you've got anything to add on that particular topic, that'll get us through it. The details of the plan obviously are not to be presented at this point because they don't have them fully developed. But if we grab that staff memo dated September 5th, I think we can probably flip right on over to well, I guess we'll take a look at the first page. The only question I had, you talk about wetlands, staff talks about wetlands. Do you feel there's a need to get a hold of Eagle and talk about regulation of wetlands, and what do you got really here?
Well, there are wetlands.
Yep.
The wetlands on the property were delineated back in, when did we first do that plan? Do you recall? Probably 10, 12 years ago. They were delineated back then. We're using that delineation. Yes, we recognize things have probably changed. As we move from here into the preliminary planning phase, we'll have to have that updated.
Yeah.
So we recognize it, but it's already been through a process about a dozen years ago when Joe first looked at this from a development perspective, so.
Okay, all righty. I'm now on the packet, page 8, which is page 2 of the memo, just the proposed concept plan. At the bottom, we're kind of in the general there. Flipping to page 3. Kind of talks a little bit about the gate. We did have, for the Planning Commission's benefit, we did have a informal site plan review committee with the applicant, talked about gates, and it looks like the fire authorities chimed in on gates. The gates are still on the plan,
They are.
so I think we should probably talk about gates a little bit, whether you support the concept of gates or not, in terms of wanting gates in the community. And specifically for me, it's not the front gates that become an issue, but it's that gate between you and
Walnut Ridge.
Walnut Ridge. So staff memo there's talked about it a little bit there in the middle of the page. Why we connect neighborhoods, the need to connect neighborhoods. Those that were here for the Walnut Ridge remember why we have what we have there.
Right.
So I guess we need to provide some feedback on opinions of gated, separating the communities.
Well, that's why there's no house there now, because it's a designated easement for a road through into that other development, which goes out into Hacker Road. So by putting a gate there, we would do away with the objective of connectivity, which is what we were after. So I'm not really in favor of the gate. If you want to have, and even have a gate up front, people, I mean, that doesn't make any sense either. So, but the biggest problem is the gate in the rear. But we need to have pass-through for access to Hacker Road. That's what the intent was. That's what the comprehensive plans calls for.
I look at this as kind of very similar to Mill Point and
Yes.
Autumn Woods, you know, where we had the concept that required the two subdivisions there to connect. And I think if you look at San Marino, those were built over time, but they were all separate developments. And there was a lot of connectivity among all those properties that were in there. So I have to say I'm not a strong favor of a gated community. I don't think Hartland Estates would have a gated community today that were being proposed. I mean, it would be done probably completely different, but you and I have talked about that before, so somewhat.
Okay.
Anyway, I mean, that's kind of that, I agree. I think the whole idea was to connect to allow that group over there to have that, so we weren't having so many properties coming off of onto M59 without a light. Now that Hacker Road and 59 are going to have a light there, it makes more sense to have that access there. It allows much more fleet, and I think it's a public health safety kind of thing to have that connectivity there, and it's important.
Okay. Sue, do you have an opinion?
I agree with what you guys
Okay.
said.
Anything down
It's one
here?
of our goals.
Yeah,
Correct.
and I for sure agree for all the comments and even more comments. And, you know, wanting a walkable community, that the freedom to be able to move around and visit with neighbors and have more access for the kids to travel back and forth, because they are going to be smaller homes, so I'm sure that they will be obviously families. The access to the church, I just think that in Hartland, our direction is the friendly by nature is to be very walkable, so that's a major, you know, direction that we're moving. So the internal gate, I did have a question about, it sounds like there's gates, so does that mean there was a possible front gate in the plan? Is that a
Yes.
motorized type of gate?
Yeah, there is one shown. It's
There is.
essentially the same as what's on the entrance to Hartland Estate.
Yeah?
So just so you're clear, there's one off Hacker Road, there's a gate there. I'm guessing that would primarily be open most of the time. The one in the back that would connect to Walnut Ridge is listed as an emergency access, and that probably indicates that gate might be closed most of the time, so.
Well, the comprehensive plan's not calling for anything of emergency access, it's calling for the connectivity of neighborhoods and specifically calls out, the
Yeah.
traffic and the flow. If you want to have gates at the front of the neighborhood for looks and never close them, I guess that could be a landscaping feature. But you can't close the gates because then the people in Walnut Ridge can't get through. And I think we talked about that at the informal, so if they're an aesthetic and an architectural thing and they don't work, that doesn't matter to me. But the closing off of the community and not allowing others to travel through, the health, safety, welfare, the access issues are a big deal for me. So it's not a site plan review, we're not denying anything, we're just giving feedback on the plan that's provided here. Mike, did you have anything to add on that comment?
Yes, I did. My only concern is with having a connection between the two subdivisions. In this particular area, we have two large religious churches on each side of this development. My concern is for this new neighborhood and the potential when services let out at the churches, people taking an advantage of driving through communities to avoid backups that occur when the services end. So that's my only concern with this particular area. I'm not opposed to connecting developments such as we have in other areas of Hartland Township. But in this particular corner, it's concerning to me because I see this as a bypass around. St. John's is letting out, so we'll cut through the eastern development, or if Venture Church is letting out, we'll cut through the other way.
It's probably more the latter than the former,
So-
because if there's a light at Packer and 59, there's no reason for the people at St. John's to cut through that neighborhood.
Only when, that's a short distance from the corner of M59 and Hacker Road to their.
Yeah, but there's
See,
going to be a light there.
I know there's going to be a light, but that's going to back up very quickly. So as I'm waiting to exit the parking lot, why not cut straight across Hacker Road, come up through the subdivision, and now I have an advantage to get out onto M59. That's my only concern. As I say, in this particular situation, it's concerning from that perspective. So the only comment I have.
All right. There was a comment in the middle of the page, sheds, those kinds of things, and pools and all that, is everything meant to be in the setbacks, you thinking?
Yeah, the intent was that all of the development for each unit would be within that building envelope that's been depicted.
Okay. That was just a,
Porches,
That's kind of very
decks.
similar to Mill Point.
Yes.
yeah, and it's just a comment that was raised in here, it wasn't identified, so just asking the question. Yep. So I'm flipping over to page 4 now, and we're on item B, which is proposed density. What are you guys thinking? Is that density working for you?
I think it does for me, and one, for two reasons. One, provided the available sewers there, and, there's going to be some work on that pump station. I think there's some necessity there, but I think the applicant is right about the market. I think that the market has changed considerably, and I think in this case, I mean, you only have to go up the road to, what's the No, what's the name?
No. Steve Gronow's
Yeah,
development?
Steve Gronow's. What was the
Chestnut
name of
Ridge,
it?
Chestnut?
Fiddler Grove.
Fiddler Grove. I mean, that's, I mean, that's even more dense than this, given the number of acres there. So I'm okay with it. I like the idea of all the green space that's around it. I think this is a well thought out look right now. So that's my general thought.
How are you guys doing?
So I feel the same. I feel that the product, that today there's definitely a need for this kind of product for a home that's smaller, that would fit into more families' budgets. I like the layout, I like the location, and yeah, I agree. I agree that I'm fine with it.
Mike?
Troy, what was the density on Fiddler Grove? Do you recall? Was it similar to this?
I don't recall that off the top of my head. What did he have, 25?
25 or 6 units.
In there, and it was
I say 10 acres.
10,
Something like that, wasn't it?
10 acres, so,
This kind of fits within those parameters.
Yeah, I was just trying to, for my personal self, trying to visualize the density and recognizing that we had this discussion with Fiddler Grove. I was trying to envision what this might look like in relationship to that development. Other than that, no, I agree. I do like the layout of the entire development. So, fine and dandy.
Sue?
Yeah, I know you have to give us more development later with the grading and how the open space all works. So I like the concept as well. I just kind of want to see the next level of detail, how, if the open space, some of what you're calling usable, I'm not considering yet, but I sure think that the concept is good, and I agree with you on the market.
Keith?
I'm okay with the density, and especially I'd like to see development with that density the further out away from 2359, and because we already got enough traffic there anyway, so if some of the density gets moved out a little bit further, it's okay with me. And it's going to sit kind of back, surrounded by some woods and stuff, and really not going to be that visible anyway.
Yeah, and I think you already know I support it. I think this is a very good use of the property. I like the layout. I think from a marketing standpoint, which is not my concern, the layout is great because there are very few units that back up to one another. People are going to be able to look out their back door and not have another back of a building 40 feet from them. So I congratulate you on that, and I'm fine with the density. C, public road access. Do you have to do any paving on Hacker? Do we need to bring pavement further north?
Yeah.
Okay,
You have to go on
It's-
400 feet.
Yeah, right.
right there. So, okay. Any comments on that? Thoughts on that? I'm already on page 5, traffic generation. We talked about a signal now. We're not going to get into any traffic studies for this, are we? We're going to require that? I shouldn't say it that way because then I'm leading you. Are we going to?
Keep leading. You're doing wonderful.
well, I guess that's a worthy comment. The applicant has not submitted a traffic study as part of this. There will be a signal at Hacker Road and Grand River. It's my understanding that the wiring for that signal has just recently been installed, and that work could start on that soon. So that'll be in fairly soon, if not already, maybe even. So that's a comment, I guess. Do you feel that additional traffic information is needed for a project like this? I guess I'll leave that to you guys to decide if that's something you need to see.
I do not.
I do not either. I mean, there was a pretty intensive study done with the other development, Walnut Ridge, and MDOT was pretty well involved, and they had the discussion that they would review it themselves. after Walnut Ridge was developed, and if they felt the need to do something, they would take care of it. So, how like they have with the light.
Well, and the location of this 55 units is just north of a fairly major intersection now with a traffic signal. What kind of improvements are you going to ask them to make? They're paving the road, they have paved access, they have a traffic light several hundred feet south of there. What do you want to know?
Well, and we can tell you that all of the traffic is primarily going south. There's my traffic study. I mean, you'll get a car going north, but essentially, a traffic study is going to say, traffic's going to go south,
Yeah.
it's going to get onto M59, it's going to go half east, it's going to go half west. Okay, there you go.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
at least this body's not thinking we need one.
I don't think we need more traffic.
Right,
Okay.
right.
I think MDOT needs to do more traffic studies on M59.
I mean, I don't know, but like, let's just say, I don't know what happens at Hacker Road and M59, if there needs to be a long right-hand turn lane, a longer left-hand turn lane, waiting at the light, I don't know those things. That would be
No,
something
but-
that could be considered.
The only, well, I thought I would
Or
have to,
backup.
is you got the church sitting on the
Yeah.
corner, and one mass is going to exit more traffic
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
at one time
Mm-hmm.
than this 55 houses, along with anybody coming from Walnut Ridge, could ever put on
Right,
that corner.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that would be my
Yeah, that
thought.
would be the only thing. It's just
Right.
kind of the backup waiting.
I always thought MDOT should give the church another exit to allow people to go west, a drive.
Another drive.
St.
And
John.
maybe that'll happen someday. I don't know.
So
Yeah.
just on the church note, I did search, and the service times are an hour different. St. John's is 8:30 and 11 service on Sunday, and the Venture is 9:30 and noon. So they might, oftentimes churches work together with those kind of things. You know, just talking about the vehicular traffic that Michael commented on, because they, you know, as Joe mentioned, it could be very busy leaving. So, yeah, just a comment.
Okay.
Doesn't the Venture Church have police out there directing traffic
They
sometimes
very well
anymore?
could, yeah.
They did
Yeah,
when it
that's
first
a lot
started,
of-
I think.
Well, no, I go
Don't.
by there,
During the service?
yeah, coming back from where we come from, and no.
Okay.
Okay, item E, internal vehicular pedestrian circulation, you got proposing sidewalks both sides of the street?
Yes.
Yep. Any comments on any of that? We already talked about the road, the layout we like, talked about the gate. On page 6, utilities,
Is it, if I can, is it too early to talk about, and
No.
maybe it was mentioned, walkability, would the plans be to have sidewalks through the neighborhood?
yeah, both sides of the
They have
street.
Both sides up?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep. Page 6, I don't have it highlighted, somewhere in here comes something, it's utilities, something came back from the county on the, I'll call it the lift station. So you guys are all working with them and taking care of that and figuring that out?
We've asked them for what it will take to make the lift station
Do what it needs to do.
appropriate.
Okay,
We're still waiting for a response.
all right. Any comments on design details? That's not coming yet. They did provide you a couple architectural renderings in your packet. Product looks very marketable, very marketable,
Nice.
very nice. Any comments on that?
I think they look very nice.
Yeah. Open space, looks like you have a lot of, did you run through more than one green highlighter on that, or did you get it all in there? It was a new one.
Spray can. I hit it with a spray can.
Okay. Probably get into some better details
Yeah,
later, but
Later.
any comments on it? Look good? Yeah. Landscaping comes later. Exterior lighting, if you're going to do any street lights, show us what they are. Recognizable benefits, Troy, you want to touch on that?
So one of the criteria for plan development is the applicant will have to present to the planning commission and to the township board a recognizable benefit of this project, and then even kind of adding on to that, the density, we talked a little bit about. He exceeds the allowed density, but there's a bonus that's allowed in the PD, and there's somewhat of an additional benefit of the project to award the increase in the density. I think he's, let me try to find that for the density. He's,
It's at the beginning.
so he can have like 49 units with just the regular density. He's at 55, so he's over by 6. The bonus would allow him to go up to like 69, so he's well within what would be permitted with the bonus, but as part of that, the planning committee, there's supposed to be an outstanding attribute of this project as well. So those are the 2 items that will have to be part of the project, is a recognizable benefit of the project, and then in order to be awarded the extra density, an additional bonus of the project as well.
Okay. All we have left are reviewing agency comments, letters. You can take a look at those. And any other comments for the project?
I think it's a nice project. I like it a lot.
Great. Sue, anything? No? Keith? I think it's a great project. I think it'd do very well here.
All
Mike?
set.
Tom?
No.
Did you get what you wanted? I think it was pretty positive.
It always sounds good at the conception.
All right.
Not
Well,
always,
good.
Not always.
The devil's in the details.
If you paid attention, then
Yeah, no, looks pretty good. I think you're off to the board now.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate your comments and thoughts. When do you anticipate will be scheduled for the board, just as a quick question? Won't hold you to it.
I'm guessing the October 8th board meeting. Now, I don't control the board's agenda, but that's what I'm guessing.
Very good.
If you want to get on that one, we could probably make that.
Appreciate it.
All righty, great, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
All right, let's move to item B, 7B, which is the Planning Commission discussion on permitted uses. Probably the best thing to do is turn the floor over to Troy. You did a fabulous job leading us on this last time, so why don't you continue that program?
So this request was initiated by the Planning Commission to discuss this. We had a request come before the Planning Commission, and I don't want to get into it too much, but essentially a special use permit was required, and as part of that request, and after it was done, there were some comments about, did that really need a special use permit? Could we have made some changes so that that applicant didn't have to make such an application and come before us? And the comments were, maybe we should just look at all of the special use permits in the zoning ordinance and kind of go through and see if there's some changes that can't be made. And we did talk about this at the August 8th meeting. We knocked out 2 zoning categories, the CA and the RUR category. And what I had done is given you all of the single-family residential categories, and apparently that was a little optimistic on my end. So we're still in single-family, and we have gotten through 2, but I think we hit the 2 big ones. We had a lot of great comments and some potential changes there that could be made to simplify and make the process a little user-friendly for residents. But now we've got the remaining single-family categories. So if you want, I can pull up. We are at the RR district, and a member of the Planning Commission was fortunate enough to send an amazing spreadsheet that you all should have received, and maybe that will help you. And if you have questions, I'm right here to help answer.
Well, I guess I have the first comment. Most of it looks pretty good. It looks very similar to what the others look like. There just were a couple that were different and I don't know the reason behind them. In the principal permitted uses, in every other category, churches and religious institutions are by special use, and in this one, they are not. And I don't know if it should be slid over for a matter of consistency. I don't know why in this particular district it is a permitted use versus not by special use. And that's just an observation I made there.
I had a comment about some,
The RR is not on here.
No, I see that.
I'm wondering if that, I mean, there's only one area that has this designation, and it's Mr. Kraus's property.
Right.
And maybe he has some ideas, because I'm wondering if, I know that at Walden Woods, from time to time, they have church services there. But they don't have a building or anything like that for that. But I don't.
Yeah, but you're not in the building for it.
Right, right. So,
This was something that was negotiated way back with the tax review. I don't recall the rationale as to
I don't either.
why it
Well,
was a permitted use, other than that it makes it a lot easier when you get to that point if you want to do it.
Right,
right.
right.
It's not an objection to use.
Oh, probably not. It's just every other category, it's under special land use in every other district, but this one. So I'm just picking the difference. I have no idea why. I wasn't around when that was created.
And I don't recall, that's why I thought since you were
But if-
here, you might have some idea about it, so.
Yeah, I mean, the rest of it is not far off from, I wouldn't change much of anything. It was just that one stood out as unusual. I wonder why a church would be permitted there, but not permitted anywhere else.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, I bring it up only because that's what we're doing, is looking at these. If it's not something we want to change because of something was just stated about tax tribunals, I'm not thinking it's probably likely a church is coming anyways. So, don't feel that strong on it, but it is different.
So, up on, just keep this in mind, I mean, up on US 23, old US 23, where St. Mary Magdalene is, that was all one big parcel. And then they had the houses built around, and then kind of like Venture Church almost. So I have no objection to keeping it the way it is, but that may be one of the concepts that, that's being, could be employed here, so.
Yeah. Note it's different. We can just leave it alone
I
for
just say
that
leave it
matter.
alone.
That's fine. That was really all I had on the RR that I was going
All
to
right.
comment on.
So then moving on to the STR.
before we get too far, I did have a question. Help me understand this. There's bed and breakfast on here twice.
Are you in RR?
No,
We're doing it by
because I
zoning
thought he was
district.
going on to the
Oh,
next
so
one.
we're-
Oh, STR. Oh, okay.
Oh, you're on STR?
Yeah.
But if you look in bed and breakfast facilities is listed in CARUR and STR. And then at the other place it mentions bed and breakfast, it's only allowed in the MR district. I'm just trying to understand what.
Are you
Yeah,
reading
boarding-
off the
boarding
spreadsheet, or are you,
houses, yeah.
or are you reading
Yeah,
off of the zoning ordinance?
I'm reading out the spreadsheet.
What sections? Because he's got 3 sections here, principal, accessory, and
It would
special.
be under, well, I don't know. Oh, maybe it's under special. I don't. It could be because there's no title on the page.
Yeah, it's right.
So it's page 2.
It's under
Mike?
special.
Is this
No.
page 2 of this?
Yeah, no, it's a continuum of 1. So it's a special land use, bed and breakfast, are a
Facility.
special use in CA, RUR, and STR.
Okay, then go down a little further, so boarding houses, rooming houses, or bed and breakfast establishments.
Correct.
And it's only and that's only allowed in MDR,
Yes,
also under special use.
correct.
Okay, why do we need to list it twice? That's all I was,
Well, there's a couple of these that I was going to point out
yeah.
as this was put together.
Childcare,
There's some of that same similarity with public and private recreation areas. Sometimes we say you can have public, others say public and private, or vice versa, everything. So I was trying to comprehend those as well.
childcare is another one that's mentioned twice.
Yes. So,
I just thought it'd be time to clean it all up if we felt we needed to, that's all.
no, I agree with you. As I was putting it together, I'm going, am I reading this correctly?
I guess it does, maybe it doesn't really matter because they're all special use anyway.
Well, so the question I thought of at the time is, under MR, was that a special use permitted, and should it be excluding bed and breakfast for boarding houses, rooming houses, and then bed and breakfast be its own entity on this list?
Well, you'd have to go to the definition to define, I'm a little confused, because they're all in special land uses right
Yes.
now.
Yeah.
So the question is what?
Do we need it listed twice?
Where is it listed twice? In
Well,
RUR,
let's see,
STR, it's only listed
I'm
once.
looking at,
XXV
Yeah.
listed.
STR, special land use, 3, bed and breakfast facilities. Where else is it in
look
STR?
under boarding houses, XXV 25.
There is no
Number
XXV.
25.
We're on STR.
Well,
Oh, 25.
not in STR. The question is, why did it get reworded under the category of MR?
We're looking at,
Versus-
Well, you need to go to the definition because a boarding house is not the same as a bed and breakfast
I agree.
or a
but-
rooming house.
But under MR, it includes bed and breakfast. It says boarding houses, rooming houses, or bed and breakfast facilities or establishments. So what's the difference of that definition versus what Keith is pointing out, a bed and breakfast facility?
So if you just in the MR, you just separated those,
separate 'em.
would that
Would
clarify
that
that?
solve it then?
Yeah, well, I think so.
yeah.
Oh, well, that's fine. When we get to MR, we can do that. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, no, if that's the issue, because I'm trying to figure out what the difference is.
Well, so are we.
Okay, well, good. We're all confused then.
You need to look at the spreadsheet.
Well, I used the spreadsheet to say, and maybe I didn't use this correctly, I looked at it and said, oh, private recreation areas, those are permitted in CA and RUR, and those are all. Now, would that be appropriate that we should only permit it in those two, or should we permit it in any of the others? And that's how I was using your spreadsheet.
And that's how I was too, except I noticed some
Redundancies, okay.
Yes,
All right, we'll make note when we get to MR that we're going to separate those.
we will do that.
Perfect.
We made, so noted.
Well, I jumped ahead 2 weeks ago and got it.
It's hard not to.
Okay,
All right,
STR.
STR. How's everybody feeling about that?
Let's see. One thing I wanted to say about SDR, the essential public service buildings, structures, and equipment excluding storage tags, storage yards. Don't we kind of already have some in the settlement area? Existing buildings?
In STR or in other?
But they're permitted. They
Yeah.
are in there.
Oh, in SDR?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, not,
Did your printer stop working?
no. Maybe. Skip the next. What does it say in your spreadsheet?
It says
It says it's permitted, it's got an X on it.
yeah.
It's,
Okay.
did we get 2 copies of this? Was there
No.
2 versions?
Just
No.
one version of the spreadsheet.
Okay, all righty.
Okay. I don't see any other issues with this, do you?
I didn't see any issues with SDR. Did anybody have a comment on SDR? Okay,
Okay.
all right. Now he's got RE on the board.
Okay.
We have a veterinary clinic in SDR. Does it say SDR there?
What?
Veterinary clinic?
No.
I didn't see one.
We already have one.
Have one there already? Yeah.
In town, in the
Yeah,
village.
right.
Well, it would be an interesting conversation. That's not what we were doing to this right now. Right now, all we were doing is comparing, should they be permitted or special use, and where should they
Okay,
fit?
I thought we were going to do it
And
all,
that,
okay.
no, Troy said that was not the way we were going to do
Include,
it.
okay.
So-
And Troy's in charge.
And Troy's in charge. And Troy said, let's get through it, but it was, the scope of it was, because the scope kept growing, and we didn't want to.
I guess I didn't hear what the question was.
We have businesses in STR right now, and they are not on the list in any way, shape, or form as being permitted.
Oh, and you want to possibly
Is that,
But
take a
we're
look
not
at that?
doing that
is
now.
that the scope of the
Troy
project
said
right
we
now?
weren't going to do that yet.
Well, that's a good question. You know, the STR is, it's a unique zoning, and it's somewhat near a commercial zoning as well in some cases. So I'll add it to the list of things to look at down the road, but
Yeah.
businesses,
Add it to the uses that we don't have, the non-existing uses that we may want to add, because that probably needs to be
Yeah,
addressed too.
Well, you
think
need to
it-
address
probably
coffee
that will-
shops, restaurants, dry cleaner, all that.
There's a lot of,
personal
there's a lot of
Live work
uses
even.
that we don't have listed
You
yet.
know?
but I think it's probably where you could, we'll probably could spend some time looking at the STR zone properties and how many true businesses exist on those.
I think that's what we really need. We
Yeah.
need to know which ones are actually zoned, because there's, like you said, there's
Well, we have
Barber shop
insur-
now.
barber
Yeah.
shop,
we have
grocery store.
insurance, accountant, none of that's even permitted down there right now. And what we need to do is look at what small villages have that other villages
Right.
have.
Yeah,
and
but
then
that
we need
might
to
not
come-
be zoned STR, that might be zoned,
But if we want to
But we could
allow,
use some of the language from
we can
those.
use the language of like some personal services, like a barber shop. We want to allow the accountant's office, the
Or-
insurance,
Or a CVS / Walgreens type outlet. where-
Private Walgreens, private pharmacy, you mean?
Like a
type thing?
pharmacy
so,
outlet.
but that is a big scope in itself, just examining the village. If you're going to promote any development of the village, you need to be
Right.
able to permit
but
it.
this is a zoning map right here, and the yellow is kind of the STR, but this pink is an actual commercial zoning category. So I'm wondering if some of those businesses you're thinking
Are
of
falling
are
in that.
actually in this commercial zoning and not in the STR.
Well,
Yeah, that's what we probably need to know, like
Yeah.
that street, when you go down.
Let's skip over
Avon.
STR.
Because
Well, we-
almost the entire side, on the entire east side in the Avon is commercially zoned, not STR.
it's the village commercial or whatever we call it. isn't it?
But the vet areas,
But we had a question here back 6 months ago when the new hair salon wanted to go down there, because the ordinance did not show hair salons, if I remember the conversation we had. And we made a determination that that was close enough to something and permitted that to happen. And that's what we need to do, is take a look at village commercial.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that's probably one of the more important things,
Yeah.
this area here.
Yeah. So what do
Especially
you,
if we're going to, like you said,
Promote
promote
it.
that. Promote it.
we need to make it easy for them to get in.
Well, I mean, there had been times when we talked about extending that area. You know, if we got additional ballparks and moved Springer, for example, and made that, had that area that's currently ballparks, and made that all an opportunity for, you know, kind of a settlement residential as well as you enter. Because that was discussed back when I was on the planning commission originally. I mean, the idea, of course, would, we wouldn't do that because Springer right now is used, but we would find other places for those fields. But if someone wanted to come in and look at that as a potential opportunity, why wouldn't we look at that as an opportunity? And I think we need to address that.
Okay. Where do you got us now? Are you on RE?
So, yeah, I've moved on to RE.
He's moved on. He just told us that. I just heard him tell us.
I took notes of those comments. So the RE is very similar to,
I thought we went through this one.
Not RE. We did RR.
yep.
RR is,
We did the last time, because this is where
the minutes say?
Yeah.
This is the reason that we brought it to us, I thought.
it might have been where I was jumping, and then we decided we were going category by category and did CA.
Yeah, all right, because I thought we did this
I
one. 'cause
think
this
we
is the one
did.
with the horse farm, and we wanted to put a barn on there, right?
I don't think so.
No.
No, that was under CA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
Yeah, we haven't done
One of them
RE,
that I
because
thought
he was
we-
going in order.
okay.
Any comments on any of that?
I don't have any.
I'm moving on to SR. This is a big one.
Yeah, this is-
This one does have a lot of our existing single-family residential, the RE and RR type zoning. You just don't, we don't have a lot of land zoned that. Obviously, CA is our biggest one, but SR is a big zoning category. And it's laid out very similar to RE.
So in SR, that is the only zoning that allows nursing and convalescent homes.
Well, you know what? In RUR, it's a special use.
I know.
I think it should be a special use anyways.
I do too.
I do too.
I do
When you
too.
look at what SR is, and then you look at what SR is not supposed to be,
Right.
I think I would probably consider sliding that into a special land use. I think somebody's going to want to know if they have a nursing or convalescent home
Right.
coming next door.
Yeah, as a
So-
permitted use.
So there's also here this essential public services, provided there is no principal permitted uses. Then it says, provided there is no building or, and then the other ones on the other side, special, excluding storage yards. They're almost, that to me means the same thing.
It does. It does.
Yeah, you're right.
Well, and-
So, yeah, we prefer to have outdoor storage yards again.
So, I think in the permitted uses, it's essential services, provided there's no building.
See how they have building?
And in the special use permit, it is a building, but no
Yards.
No,
storage yards.
Yep,
Okay, so that's the
So-
difference?
yep.
So I'm not thinking off the top of my head, maybe like I'm not able to think of a essential public service
Out of building.
equipment, or it wouldn't be a building. I don't know, pump
Yeah, like a
station?
sanitary pump station.
A well house.
Well house?
You're looking at
If it's
well
not,
houses.
doesn't have a building,
You're looking
no.
at well houses, lift stations,
Yeah.
fire, potential fire buildings.
No, it wouldn't be a building. If it was a building, it needs an SUP.
Yes, right, would need, right, that's what I'm saying.
No building or outdoor storage. Well, you could need those in SR, though. I mean, lift stations for sewer,
That's over
permitted.
special
and
land
that's,
use.
and that should stay there.
Yeah,
Right.
special land use.
Yeah.
Do we give examples of that in this definition? Because I don't have the whole thing up.
If you bear with me 1 second, I'll see if I can't find.
Section
Essential
4.26.
services. We've got like public utilities, underground surface, underground gas, some of the utilities.
Yeah, so it's like transformers and those items that you talk about, but
Police
think-
call boxes.
so for some of these things, I think it would be good to have by way of example, but not, by way of example, we talk about what those would be. We'll have some interpretive examples.
Yeah, we could
Transformer
do that in the
stations,
definition.
Okay, so-
gas
Yeah.
regulator
Okay,
stations
so it is in there, all right.
are not permitted in this district, in the GC district, but
Right.
I'm not able to think of off the top of my head what something like that might be.
Yeah.
So when I think that if it's essential and it involves a building in order to allow for single-family dwellings or the items that are in there, why should it need a special use? If it's an essential service to the principal permitted uses that are
Yeah,
required.
I would agree. The only part that makes me nervous about it is the storage yards, not knowing what that means.
Yeah.
But if a building is required, it's required.
That's how I look at it, yeah.
Well, you could take that language, it says essential public service building excluding the storage yard, and if you just moved it
Okay.
into a principal permitted use, would that meet your needs?
Let's see.
Other than
Yeah.
if a person wanted to add a transformer or something, they're at war with.
Well, a transformer to me isn't
It's part of the
storage. When
essential.
I think storage, I'm thinking like not good stuff. I'm thinking like just a storage yard.
A fenced
Not a
in gravel.
fenced-in yard that has a gas regulator or a lift station. That's not storage. Storage is
Like
piling up coils of wire or, that's storage. But a working lift station and a pump, that's not storage. That's an
That's
essential
required.
service without storage. So if that's what it is and we can define it clearly enough, maybe you can go over and just say that you can have an essential public service buildings without outdoor storage, and then just put the outdoor storage on the special use permit. What do you guys think of that?
Yep.
Okay.
So we're allowing the building at this point into this density of residential? Because up until now, we're saying no building and all the other,
Well, I
this is
think
where
we should
allow the
now have
buildings to
that
come in.
discussion.
Yeah, I mean, is this the place we start allowing the building? Because up until now, we haven't allowed the building.
Well, I think that discussion just came up. I'm wondering if it's essential, I don't know what Joe meant. My mind is going, would it really matter if it was a high-density apartment zoning or an SR zoning
Where
or
does
a,
it belong?
or a CA zoning? If it's essential and you need a building on it, you kind of need a building.
Well,
And I'm wondering if we should go back,
yeah, then
change,
we have to check, yeah.
well, I'm wondering if we should go back and change the verbiage on the other districts to.
Yeah, they're all very similar.
They're all identical wording. Go with essential public services without outdoor storage as your permitted use.
Essential publics.
And then under the special use, you can go essential public services outdoor storage. Because you can't just write it off and not let it happen. But at least you'd have an opportunity to talk about it. And you would notice the
Deny it.
neighbors
You can
and deny it.
land use permit for that.
So if I understood you correctly, so if a building is necessary, it's allowable, is right?
Well, only because of the word essential on it.
I know
It's-
it. I'm with you.
Yeah, I'm saying-
Yeah.
I'm saying
So
if you-
it's just the outdoor storage piece
part
now.
that,
I would say
Okay.
allow it all in permitted, I think this is what Joe's saying, and
Yeah.
then under the special land use, just call out the outdoor storage for essential services is the special use part.
Gotcha.
But you're going to allow the essential service to be conducted there, and if they need a building to operate it out of, that's the principal permitted use.
Okay. Gotcha.
But I would do it across the board in every district.
So I'm
I
trying to think of why that would be, why was that a special use in the first instance anyway? What would make that an issue? Is there some reason that we would require, that the board would want to have that as a ability to grant a special use?
You
or
might,
deny one in order to
Well-
stop something that may be coming in?
I can tell you that
I mean, I'm being honest.
since I've been on the planning commission, there was one time that we had an essential public service up off of Old 23 north of Clyde where the gas line comes through. They have a building there
yeah.
on the property. And we made them go through site plan and we did special use. We must have had a public hearing is my guess. And they were going to put up some ragtag-looking facility, and we said, no, we can't do that. And so they upgraded the look of it for those houses around it, and that's how we did that. I don't
Well,
know.
then
that-
maybe we keep it as is then, because that gives the ability to control some of the
The architectural.
aspect of what may result in it. Because, let me tell you this, I worked on a CSO facility several years ago in Birmingham, in Bloomfield Township, and they're all very different. The facility that is above ground, most of everything else is below ground. It's a huge pump and storage. But one look architecturally is like an old grist mill. Another looks like a, I don't know, some other kind of building. But the point is that, when it's still an essential services building, but there were some requirements that I knew that we had to follow in those communities, so it blended in with the surroundings. One was on a golf course, one was in a park, so they wanted to make it look in a way that
Was appropriate for the
appropriate.
space.
Because that could just as easily have been a square block building with a roof, and an industrial looking door that someone goes in and out of.
Well, then maybe we should leave it alone.
So, yeah, all of that said, maybe there's nothing wrong with just leaving it where it's at.
I'm just,
Is there really
as we started debating it. the
Well,
more I
that's why we
thought-
talk about
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
'cause we-
right.
Yeah.
Because if we leave it as a principal permitted use, we have no control then on kind of the architecture, is that why? Because we're in
Well,
the
we have
residential.
no architecture
In the
standards
residential.
in the residential
there you
districts.
go.
You do in the
Okay, yeah,
GC,
In the GC, but not
but
here.
in
so now-
residential, we don't.
So that makes sense. There we go.
And I could see, not necessarily happening here, but you never know what the
Yeah.
future holds.
Right.
So, anyway.
Okay.
Okay. You guys want to leave it alone?
Yep.
Okay, so did we just backing
I
up?
just took you one way and took you back the other
That's
way.
right.
That's what good conversation does. Now we will be able to answer this question in 5 years when we do this again.
Yeah, right.
Did we move?
Crazy guy at the end there.
Did we move the nursing and convalescent homes over to special land use because they are that in other districts?
That's what I thought we were
Okay,
doing.
just touching base on that.
yeah, yeah, that was the SR district, we had that conversation. Everywhere
Okay.
else, it's a special use permit.
So we're sliding it over to be like the others.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. All righty, any other things on SR?
All right, MDR. And it's, I think it's very similar.
I
It
did
is.
too.
In fact, MDR and HDR, I think are exactly the same, so.
I wouldn't change that one either.
MDR, Everybody okay with that? HDR is exactly the same, everyone,
I'm okay with HDR too.
Yes.
and then MR, multiple family. This is a little different.
Why do we call it nonprofit swim clubs?
God, that was one of my questions. Why specifically swim clubs?
Well, these are some of the things that's,
They may have come out of in the old days when people were looking at, because in Ann Arbor, a lot of the subdivisions, and the older subdivisions in Ann Arbor all had neighborhood swimming pools. Like,
Right.
And then there is a swim club that closed in Bloomfield Township off of off of Northwestern Highway. I know that because I was looking at, speculating on the property for a client, and interesting whole thing there, but it took up a lot of property, and it was smack dab adjacent to all residential, but it was pretty much a commercial enterprise. So maybe that's where that came, because
Maybe a nonprofit
that was
part.
probably, 35 years old at that point. So
But you have to prove that you're nonprofit.
Yeah.
It can't be profitable.
That's just, yeah, exactly.
It doesn't seem like we need that. Can't we just keep it as publicly owned and operated recreational facilities, and a swim club or whatever would fall underneath that?
But
Do we need that?
publicly owned and privately owned are two different things. A nonprofit
This just
is
says-
generally privately
Right.
owned.
So,
I think that's fine.
really?
Yeah.
can we get rid of the swim club?
Yeah, I think we
Right.
can get rid of that. We
Can you
don't,
pull up 440 for a minute?
Because maybe
Well,
we should, how
so
come
this is-
tennis club is not listed?
yeah, I
Golf
mean,
club,
that's just like, it would be a
It
recreation
seems to me
facility.
that a lot of these, the wording, we could
Yeah.
go through almost all of them and.
And
because
make
maybe
them
it was written-
generic.
But-
Pardon me?
Make them generic for
generic,
today's
isn't it?
world,
Yeah.
today's world.
Because when was it? I
Well,
mean,
it's
since
like
we're
nursing
reviewing it.
homes is not, we
Right?
felt was.
So isn't a recreation facility cover everything?
Well, when we
What
get,
is recreation?
That's a
and
good
when we
question.
get to LI, we'll see that in there, we permit indoor sporting for tennis. But we don't permit indoor soccer facilities in LI. And because when this was written back in the old days of stagecoaches,
There was no soccer here.
what they did.
Well,
So we need to make it more generic,
That's right.
indoor
Right.
activities or physical,
Well, or
sporting activities or whatever you
including
call
but
it.
not limited to the following:
Yeah,
soccer, tennis.
lacrosse, whatever the
Recreation.
things are,
Why isn't it recreation?
whatever, baseball.
So this is this category that we get to, Keith, we get to jump back in.
Yeah, you do.
So under permitted uses in MR, public and private parks and recreation areas. Under special use, you have, then you get into this publicly owned and operated recreation facilities. I guess, as I was going through it, I'm having difficulty with the definitions. Would define the differences to me.
I think we are with a lot of them. quite honestly.
Yeah, and that's where this bed and breakfast one comes in as well.
Yeah, well, the bed and breakfast is called two different things. Not only is it all merged into one sentence, here it's called a bed and breakfast establishment. And in the other places, it's called a bed and breakfast, I think,
Facility.
facility.
Yeah.
So for straightening out of words, for sure, we should change that to facility, in addition to busting it into 2
Yeah, well,
points.
why list it twice?
It's not listed twice.
So will we eventually come back and go through all of these definitions and, seed and feed dealership, provided there is no showroom or other commercial activities included? It just seems like they could all be wordsmithed much better.
So our definition has bed and breakfast inn. Doesn't have facility or
Go through all of these.
bed and breakfast inn.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. I don't have an answer for Member Mitchell on the public recreation area as a principal permitted use and a publicly owned recreation facility needing a special use permit. I don't know what,
You think it's because of the facility, the word meaning kind of like they were thinking building where the other was area?
and it could, but as you go to section 440, I don't know that I see, I don't know that I see anything that draws a distinction between
Area
those
and
two things.
facility.
Yeah.
Yeah, the only thing I'm with you, doesn't mean the permitted would be if it's an open field
Field,
or
area,
outdoor
park.
court, whereas the special would be if you're going to actually build a facility, a building.
Like a
But-
building. It's not clear, but.
But it isn't clear, but
No.
you could try and interpret it that way, but that's kind of why we're doing some of this.
I was going to say, we shouldn't be trying. And those are good definitions, Larry. I mean, I like that idea. You know, if you're going to build a facility that has some buildings for that purpose, maybe that is the definition of special permitted uses versus just an open soccer field, let's say, or a tennis court, where that's all there is. That's a permitted use.
Well, and some of these in the MR, multiple family, those buildings are bigger and, and if you built an indoor basketball facility, that would be a bigger building. Some of that stuff probably belongs here, maybe structurally, size-wise, mass-wise. But yeah. Well, I don't know, if we can't figure it out, who is?
Well, right. Agreed.
All right.
Are there multiple categories for veterinary offices? Because what I note is XVI is veterinary office/clinics for large animal. Does
Yes.
that mean there's a small animal, a regular vet, and this would be for horses or cows or something, I'm guessing?
I think.
Or was it written in a day when the area only had large animal veterinarians?
Well, there is a large animal vet on 59 towards Howell.
Yeah, west of Latson Road on the
Right.
north side, the red barn there, yeah.
Right.
Which is a much larger facility required for
Yeah, I'm just wondering if that's,
service.
I think some, like, large animals might be equine and cattle and, as opposed to cats.
household.
Yeah, goldfish.
And usually those have an outdoor kind of area for the little larger, not that maybe dogs don't have small little kennel areas, but it's a large area they kind of have to have.
He didn't hear me.
a little bigger.
What
I
district
said
do
that
you
was
have
pretty
up there?
coy of him.
What district do you have up right now?
That was he jumped to the CA district, so
I'm sorry.
Well, I was on MR.
Yeah, we are.
I'm struggling with
All
some
right.
of the MR stuff
Yeah.
right now myself, personally. I mean, we can try and just logic through it, but
I know.
Well, the public and private parks is what sidetracked everybody.
well, I was thinking maybe I'd just go through and cross off the ones that we know we want that are permitted, that are black and white, and see how many are really left, because I'm getting, we've left all the pages or the words on the page right at the moment, Obviously, we're going to have multiple family dwellings, those are fine. duplex dwellings, I would assume would be fine in a multiple family. Public and private parks and recreation, that's a confusing one at the moment, so if we skip over it. Essential public services, provided there's no building or outdoor, we have already approved that one for every district. The state licensed residential facilities that provide up to 6 individuals, I was looking to see wherever else that was.
We have it.
Looks like that's in the SR, it's in the MDR,
It's all
it's in the
over.
HDR, it's all over
All
there.
over.
It's all the way.
So that pretty much makes sense maybe to leave it alone. Leave that
But
one
isn't
alone.
it special use, the adult care and child care?
Well,
Well, that's for 7 or more.
that's when it gets
Oh.
larger.
Next step
Oh,
up.
you're right, I'm sorry.
So then looking over at the special uses, hospitals, where do we allow them, Somewhere in here with somebody I talked, maybe we should at some point look at this LI designation, what we're permitting, and maybe we should be permitting hospitals in LI.
Yeah.
But we can
R&D
permit them in 2
R&D
districts.
R&D zoning district.
So, MR, most are MR property right on 59. So, that's probably a good thing for access. So maybe leaving the hospital alone in an MR is fine. Any thoughts on that?
Yes,
Yeah.
sounds good to me.
Yeah.
Just leave it alone?
Yeah.
Fine.
Boarding houses and rooming houses, are we making that 2 separate things, or are we making that 3? We making 3 things out of that, or 2?
Are they different, boarding houses and rooming houses? Are they
What's
different?
the definition when you click on a
Are
boarding
there
house?
boarding houses
But
anymore?
Yeah,
room-
it is
rooming
house.
house doesn't give you a
And the
definition.
rooming house?
We're going to find out, because supposedly we have a
Yeah, I
definition
know,
in
that's
here
the
on
little
it.
thing says.
I mean, there was a time,
Well, maybe we can get rid of it.
but
Yeah,
I don't know if
trying to
there
think.
is. I mean, how is that different than a bed and breakfast? But then a bed and breakfast is temporary. A boarding house could be your permanent residence for census purposes, so.
Right.
And maybe we just don't want the things. That's like, I don't know.
I don't,
I-
yeah.
But so when you
Dwelling
go to,
Other than a hotel or motel where meals or lodging and meals are provided for compensation to 3 or more persons by prearrangement, but not for transients. That sounds like what we talked about today, isn't it?
Well, is that different than a bed and breakfast? What did it say? For up to how many?
Yeah, for 3, it says
No, provided for compensation to 3 or more.
3 or more.
by
So is
pre-
there a limit to a bed and breakfast?
We don't, what's the bed and breakfast definition?
that's in section 4.18, and it says maximum number of units, no more than 6 bed and breakfast sleeping rooms shall be established in a bed and breakfast. However, the planning commission may limit the number based on the site plan and principles of good design.
So the 2 overlap.
They do a little bit. I mean, you could cover a boarding house, could be a bed and breakfast, so you could maybe eliminate boarding house. And since rooming house doesn't have a definition, we could maybe eliminate that and just call it a bed and breakfast inn or facility, whatever the ordinance calls it, and be done.
Yeah, but isn't that what we, discussion of,
We're having right now.
no, the informal.
Are we
today,
addressing
that
the
would
question of
qualify as that.
Airbnbs?
No, this is not an Airbnb at all. This is what he just read, which is renting out your rooms. Airbnb is usually renting out your whole house, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah.
Do we have a regulation on that?
No.
Not yet.
We probably should.
We probably should put that on the list. You see that popping up now.
Oh, yeah.
Airbnbs.
So what do you think, Troy, do you think we can eliminate boarding and rooming houses and just leave bed and breakfast by
Well-
what you just looked at?
I have to admit, I'm not as savvy on the world of boarding houses and rooming houses to be able to envision a scenario that could come to you that would cause, if we eliminated this. I'm trying to envision in my mind, this world, what-if world, that somebody comes in with that, what would we do at that point if we eliminated that here?
How about looking at the informal we had this afternoon? That would qualify by definition.
No. Do you think? It's more of an apartment. This says up to 6, doesn't it?
No, three or more, by pre-arrangements. It says provide meals, lodging and meals are provided for compensation to 3 or more persons by pre-arrangement.
It sounds like the old stagecoach stops where there was a tavern, and if you wanted to stay overnight, you slept upstairs in a room.
Yeah.
No, that's a bed and breakfast.
I would hate to remove the rule of character.
I'm telling you, I'm kind of siding for eliminating the words boarding and rooming houses and just have bed and breakfast.
That's what I side with. So then that brings us to private clubs, fraternities, sororities, and lodges, except those in which the principal activity is commercial in nature.
Oh, boy.
What's a private club by the ordinance? It says we have a definition on it.
Thinking like a hunting club, right? Kind of
Well, I would,
private.
but I wouldn't, but I certainly wouldn't want it in the MR district.
Well, I'm
So,
just,
yeah.
but I mean, that qualifies,
Yeah.
right?
But what I'm thinking of is, what about the Moose Lodge, the Eagles Club? What about those?
Oh,
Yeah, what about those?
So there's a definition of club, but I don't see a definition of private club. So when a term is not specifically defined, the general.
Club has, there is no public clubs.
So then you just kind of go by its common meaning, and maybe in this case.
It's a group of private individuals.
So
Not
a,
subject to Open Meetings Act, like clubs. We're not a club.
there you go. What is the definition then?
a club is an organization of persons for special purposes or for the promulgation of agricultural, sports, arts, science, literature, politics, or the like,
Like 4-H?
but not for profit, and open only to members and not the general public.
But not for profit.
So you could almost just add the word in front of that nonprofit. But
So let me ask the question, if somebody approached us to establish a Moose Lodge, where would that fit in our zoning?
Well, is the Moose Lodge private?
Yes.
Okay, well, then it would be in the MR district.
Well, it
But-
might also
But they're
fit in
for
the
profit.
commercial district
They're
as
not-
well.
They're not necessarily nonprofit.
Yeah, there's, in the commercial zoning category, there's provisions for
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's true. I never.
banquet halls, assembly halls, private clubs, lodge halls, and
Oh, okay.
similar
There you go.
places.
So do we really want private clubs, fraternities, sororities, and lodges in the multiple family district?
Well,
Well, I'm thinking, well, how about like up at Michigan State, right? You've got
Yeah.
that mix of all that housing, and you do have fraternities, sororities kind of taking over places.
Well, I.
If you were
I
a
agree.
college town, yeah.
Yeah, I know, I'm just trying
Yeah,
to think
no,
through.
right,
you know.
no, that would make sense, and maybe that's where that came from.
Well, and that's what I'm thinking, because as you move on, it talks about institutions of higher learning, large institutional uses, so I was assuming that was the train of thought, that if you had a college that was erected, you know, we would allow them to have fraternities and sororities in the same area.
I guess it doesn't hurt to leave it. I think the likelihood is not high.
I agree.
Well,
Would that be a safe thing to say?
Well, I guess it's all part of planning, right? Because the old Hartland High School now has, Washtenaw Community College has classes in there. And what if that escalated to something more than that, and they considered putting housing on the property or in the area?
Yeah, well, they're not MR, so they won't be, but yes.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
at what point?
I mean, you could leave it. It's not hurting
It's not
anything.
hurting anything, but I thought that may have been the rationale at that point.
Okay, so we're going to leave that?
How about the private clubs? Should we say private nonprofit clubs, so it doesn't become a business? Since some of those clubs are making money and it's a business, because it feels like a fraternity sorority.
Well, our for-profit clubs in our GC district, Troy, is that how you read that?
It didn't say that they were just for profit. It just identified assembly halls for clubs
I
and,
mean, I would prefer to see a Moose Lodge type thing in the commercial
Right.
district more than I would prefer to see it in a multiple-family
Right.
neighborhood district.
And a Moose Lodge is profit, makes it's a business, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that would, if we say nonprofit, then it keeps the Moose Lodge out.
As long as they have a place to go, is that, and that would be.
I don't know if fraternities and sororities are they nonprofits as well?
Yeah, as far as I know, they're nonprofits, so that's why I thought then they're kind of like a nonprofit club or organization, but nobody's making a business out of it. I don't know.
So do we want to add the word nonprofit?
I would
You
make
would?
it clarify it, yeah.
All righty, so nonprofit. Okay, so we're leaving that, adding the word nonprofit. We already talked about essential public services. Now we're on to V, publicly owned and operated recreational facilities and nonprofit swim clubs. We're stumbling over that at the moment, so let's skip it and go to VI, which is public buildings, post office, libraries, community centers, but not including warehouses, garages, and storage areas. Everybody okay with that? That one's good. Institutions of higher learning, probably not likely, but are we okay just leaving it?
Yes.
Cemeteries, we okay with that? Yeah,
Kind of odd, but yeah.
Odd, so
Odd,
it
but
just shows up
yes.
here, huh?
okay. All the public and private schools, we good with them possibly locating in those areas? They're all on the major corridor of M59. Okay,
Well, except the ones at Taylor Road.
yeah, but I mean, our MR property
MR
is-
property.
Our MR
I
property
see.
is. So adult care over 7. So the under 6 is by right, and the over 7 would be by special use. Are we all good with that?
Yes.
All righty. Public and private golf courses. Fine, leave them. I mean, I don't think any MR property we've got is big enough to hold a golf course anymore, but I suppose there may be a will, there may be a way, I don't know. Just leave it, or,
I'd leave it.
Oh, you're not hurting anything by leaving it, I
Right.
don't think.
Joe,
I was
you,
going to say it has to be approved, so,
right, Joe, you okay
Right.
just leaving it?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Churches, we're okay with that. Nursing and convalescent homes. Is that a, I'm fine leaving it, but is that a current
Yeah.
word, nursing and convalescent homes? I know we've talked about these different kinds of care, and did we the other day talk, we were going to try and take a look at what the proper wording or calling
Yeah,
of
and
these
like-
types of facilities are?
We had that memory care facility that came in. and-
Yeah, and
And they basically told us our zoning ordinance was out of date with the terminology of definitions.
Yeah.
And I've been told that 2 or 3 times besides
Right.
that. So maybe one of these ultimately will be, let's figure out what the correct terminology of those kinds of places are and get it right. And then large institutional uses, what is that by definition, Troy?
That's, if you go to section 4.34, which it's referencing, it's talking about large-scale churches as defined in section 2.2. So it must have been,
Something different than,
it really
12?
doesn't, it sets some,
How's it any different than church and religious institution?
yeah.
well,
I'm
How is
thinking
it
large
different?
institutional uses would be like a
College.
college or,
Which we've permitted,
Right.
hospitals we've permitted, churches we've permitted, you know, I don't know what we missed.
I don't know why it just,
Cheryl Stockwell would probably be,
But we've permitted schools, public
Yep.
and
Yep.
private. We've got all those large things individually listed. Leave it as a catch-all or take it out? What do you want?
Just leave it. I don't have a problem leaving it.
We'll leave it?
Leave it as a catch-all.
Okay, we're good. So we're left to just a discussion to wrap up this whole residential section on what is a public and private park and recreation area versus a publicly owned and operated recreational facilities and nonprofit swim clubs.
Yes.
And 440 didn't help us with anything because they're both referencing 440.
Yeah, so, a commercial outdoor recreation facility, such as ice skating, soccer fields, courts, football, that's listed. Athletic clubs, they're all kind of listed in here, but I don't know what, I don't see what would distinguish, when I look at 440, I don't know what would be a public or private park and recreation area versus a recreation facility, publicly owned and operated recreation facility.
Well, I'm looking back at a few others here. RUR has public and recreational areas in a permitted. STR has them permitted. And nobody's calling out this other with swim club thing.
Yeah, the swim club is the only.
Joe, is it you've been involved enough with parks, do we need to have a say in whether we do or don't want a park somewhere? Should we just leave it, should we just put it in a special use so at least there's some decision as it goes there? Or do we allow it by right anywhere they want to put them? And
Well, are we talking about those kind of parks like you have in Autumn Woods or Hartland Estates where?
well, we're just saying public and private parks, so we're kind of meshing it all up into one big,
I think you always want to have a site plan to see what's going to go in there. What kind of facilities? Are you having a soccer club? Are you having a baseball diamond?
yep.
Are you having a
dog park.
A dog park, which could be very,
Right?
exactly.
Well, and that's where I'm going. Should, the difference between the special land use and the permitted, obviously the special land use is going to get a little closer
Right,
scrutiny.
right.
There's going to be a public hearing
Right.
type of a thing. So should we just put our public and private parks, take it out of the permitted?
Uses, I would always
Just-
have it in, that's one I would question about, because that view of parks, water park,
Dog park, I
Dog
just
park?
heard.
By
That could be a,
definition, you could have a small zoo, according to our definition.
yeah, small zoo with
That's what it
animals.
says.
all right, well then maybe, and I'll offer this up, this public and private park is by permitted use in another, in the SRs of district. Maybe we ought to slide both of them, all of them over to the special land use, since it includes these weird things.
Yep. I agree.
I just saw a story on the news where some community had put a park and it was a dog park. And they're ending up having to disassemble it
Oh, yeah, that's why.
and take it out
Yeah.
because of what you, because of the barking
Yeah,
dogs.
absolutely.
I just saw it on the
Yeah.
news in the last week.
It's a big deal.
So let's take our statements, public and private parks and recreation areas in all the residential districts, just make sure they're in a special land use and wipe out this thing with swim clubs.
Right.
And then we've covered them all. We're going to get to see this again before this goes anywhere. So Troy, you'd back up to SR and do the same thing then, yeah. Okay, that gets us through all the residential districts, doesn't it?
Yep.
Okay.
The residential districts, yes.
So, as we slid all the public and private park recreation areas over into special use,
Yep.
The mobile home.
Under
park.
special use,
It's not on our agenda.
we have one category
Not on our agenda.
under CA and RUR, which is private recreational areas. Will that go away then?
Yep.
Okay,
We're just going to have a public and private park,
gotcha.
and it'll be a special land use, and we'll wipe out that swim club thing because it's confusing, and
Yep, gotcha.
let's see what happens.
Let's see what happens. Okay.
And then we'll get a copy. When we get this back, will this be a copy that shows the strikeout of what we took?
Yeah.
So we can see what we did?
Usually bring
Yep.
it before a
I
meeting.
mean, I've got my notes, but it'd be easier if we just saw the finished copy come back from you guys. So where do you see us going next with this? Are we going to other districts?
Yep, we're going to, if I just look at the legend here, we have tackled the residential districts up through the MR, and then the next ones are the mobile home park, office, light, limited commercial, and so forth, all of these. Probably not the PD, but all the other categories there.
So we'll just continue filling agendas on a light night?
Yes.
Everybody good with it so far?
Yep.
Yeah? All righty, well then let's move on to call to the public. It doesn't appear that we're going to have anybody come forward, and we'll move to planner's report, item 9.
I have nothing.
Oh, you have nothing?
nothing.
I'm sorry. Oh, I thought you were bringing it up. I was so busy keep grabbing my papers. Committee reports, I apologize for that. Anybody, any comments, anything? If not, we need a motion to adjourn, please.
So,
Whoops.
Mitchell, Kalani.
support.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Good night and thank you.